So I'm going to walk you through how I figured out the electrical wiring needed to convert this car into a manual, because it's not only the mechanical things that I need to switch out, such as the shift forks, rods, and add a clutch line, etc. It's also the electrical work needed in order to convert your car to a manual. The first thing you need to do is get a hold of the factory service wiring diagrams. You need to get it, you need to figure that out and understand how to read these diagrams and understand the signals and the wires that each wire connects to. So basically, I'm going to show you how I figured this out on reading these wiring diagrams, and also give you a sense of like what are the wires needed to, number one, route the neutral safety switch, aka the clutch position sensor, as well as the backup switch too, because for manual cars, the backup reverse switch is connected to the shifter, the switch selector, and the back of the transmission. The TCU on the R-Tronic handled that reverse switch, but now we need to add in our own reverse switch signal to the car so we can get reverse, the reverse lights come on, etc., etc. Let's first dive into the neutral safety switch, also called the clutch position sensor. So basically, this is where we are, G476. This is just a naming convention that Audi uses. So basically, G476 is basically here. I'm going to draw a line right there. So, and you notice that asterisk number 5, this is only for vehicles with a manual transmission. Great. So let's look at how the original manual harness was built and connected to in order to be able to figure out how do we send a neutral safety switch to the ECU. I'm going to zoom in here. And by the way, how you read the flow of power is from top to bottom right here. So it's basically power goes through here, snakes is all the way, and then goes down to either a ground, which is right here. This is brown, labeled brown right here. Or if it continues along its journey, like the power signal continues along its journey to some other place, some other terminal, or some other connector over here. So basically, usually brown or black is usually ground. So in this case, G476, which is our clutch position sensor that actually hooks into the clutch pedal right here. This is the wiring that you need to look at. And let's zoom in a little bit here. What I found out is that these wires correspond to these numbers here. And it turns out these are actual pins in the clutch position sensor connector. So I've looked at it, and it's actually a 5-pin connector. And we will need to route wires for pin number 1, number 2, 4, and 5. Pin number 3, there is nothing there. So pin number 1 is ground. Looks like pin number 5, this is interesting. Pin number 5, it goes to here. So I'm going to go and shift over here. And it looks like it's tapping into a wire that's coming out of connector F47, which is interesting. So what I did was I then tracked what is F47 right here. And it turns out to be the brake pedal switch. So the original factory harness actually tapped power into one of the power lines for the brake pedal switch. So already you could say like, okay, I can tap into power in the brake pedal switch, or I can just find some other source of power on my car. To make it easy, I could probably use a fuse tap, right? So this is my source of power over here. Going back here, so I've already figured out what's my ground and my source of power right here. So power goes through here, does its magic here. There's a switch here, the clutch position switch here. And then ultimately, you'll complete the circuit through the ground here. But now there are two wires shooting off from this position sensor. So now we need to go up and figure out, okay, where do these wires go? First off, so at the front of the car here, these wires will go towards the back of the car. And why do I know that? It goes to a connector bridge. And this bridge connector is called T17E, pin number 4 and pin number 9. What is that? T17E. So T17E is a 17-pin connector stationed under the rear shelf on the right-hand side of the car. And I found out that it's actually the red connector. There's a different page of this wiring manual that says, oh yeah, this connector here is colored. Oh, it's colored red. So already know there is a connector bridge here that the factory harness has wired these two signal wires into. Basically from here, it connects to a connector bridge, and from this connector bridge, it's going to send two signals to J623. Now, what is J623? According to the wiring diagram, again, J623 is the engine control module. J623 is one of the ECUs, basically. The Audi R8 actually has two ECUs. One is a primary one and one is a secondary one. And J623 happens to be the primary engine control module. Great. There is a 94 connector pin on pins 39 and 41 to send a signal to. So basically, from the clutch position sensor, and this sensor comes with usually comes with the clutch pedal when you order it from Audi. Once you press on the clutch, the sensor will send two signals to the bridge here, and from there the bridge will relay this back into the engine. And then let's just basically draw a little line here, demarcation line, and this is the firewall, right? So this is the inside of the car, and this is basically the engine right here towards the back of the engine. So there are two signal wires that we need to route and hook into pin 39 and pin 41. From there, that is how you hook up the clutch position sensor. So there's 4 wires. Again, let's recap. One is power. According to the factory harness, you tap in power from F47, which is the brake lamp switch. Tap in power here. Power flows through. It goes through here. It gives this clutch position sensor a charge, so you could then send two signals to the ECU over here. So this is right here, and these signal wires are going to pin 39 and pin 41 on T94, which is a 94 pin connector on the ECU. This is the backup lamp switch on the wiring diagram here. I'll center this, and basically this is F4 right here. This is the backup switch here. Notice how there are two pins, pin number 1 and then pin number 2, and you will use these as a guide to figure out which wire goes where and to which pin, and also which color the wire to, which is great because this wiring diagram color codes these wires. So once you study these wires, you can just go to the car and actually look for this color combination. In this case, this is for the manual version of the car. So the default manual version of the harness has these wires. So F4 is basically right on top of the transmission here. So let's just draw an imaginary line right here. This is the firewall, and right here is the engine here, and then the transmission will say be here, around here. So basically what this means is I have two wires going in and out of this switch. And notice this is a switch. This is a symbol for the switcher, because if you basically go in and complete the circuit, you go and transfer power to the destination of the signal. And the destination of the signal is basically, if you just really trace it, you complete the switch, power actually either goes through 263, which doesn't give you anything. But here, if you start tracing this down, it goes to a connector bridge called T17D10. Now, what is that specifically? T17D10 is a connector bridge right here. So this is a 17-pin connector stationed under the rear shelf, and it is, let's see here, it is brown. So the original harness has a bridge connector. Basically, it goes in. Zoom back here. Let's go back to our firewall. This is our firewall. And then from here on, runs the signal down here, has a connector T17D on pin number 10. This is how you read it. And then from there, it continues its journey up to its final destination. And where is this final destination? To this module called J519. And J519, if I zoom out here, J519 is called the electrical system control module. Basically, it's the brains that controls all the electrical systems of the car. This module is actually located at the front of the car, underneath the glove box of the car. So basically, it goes all the way from the engine through the firewall to this connector bridge, and then from there, it will then go and hook up into a connector called T8A6. So I'm gonna zoom in here. So T8A6. So basically, T8A6 is basically, this is the name of the connector. It's a 8-pin connector on pin number 6 right here. So if we were to wire the lamp, the backup switch, to this electronic vehicle control module, we need to wire some power to this connector T8A on pin number 6 right here. So this is how you would go about and trace all these wires and figure out, okay, if I were to add in this backup lamp switch, which I need to do for this car, because the manual shift unit will have a switch, a backup lamp switch. Once you go into reverse, you need to figure out and trace all these different wires. One thing to know is that this is a special case. If you just need to learn from experience reading this, this is a switch and power actually goes here. Power goes flows through here. So basically, where does this come from? Who knows? In the original manual conversion, it's some sort of power unit. What we need to do, we need to just go here and then tap into power. And once we tap into power here, we can then the power to pin number 1 of the connector, and then hook up a signal goes out to the vehicle electrical system control module here. One thing of note for people who have cars that is 2010 plus for R8s, the connector that you need to send a signal to up here from F4 is actually T52A16. So they actually, in 2010, Audi actually changed the connector type. So therefore, it is T52A. So there are actually 3 52-pin connectors at the back of the vehicle electrical control module for years 2010 and above. And you need to route that backup reverse signal to the first of the 3 52-pin connector on pin number 6. So that is an FYI for you. So really, it's just, yeah, it takes a lot of just research and asking other people who have done this and pouring through the manual, just really just doing your homework really and understanding how to trace these wires for your car in order to be able to understand what you need to do when you're doing electrical work. So let's recap again what we need to do for the neutral safety switch, clutch position sensor. We need to route ground. We need to find power. And those are pretty easy. You can find ground or a source of power in the car fairly easily. And then number 3, you need to hook a send two signals to ECU. The backup lamp switch. One, you need a source of power. So once we flip on the switch, that switch will relay that power signal to the vehicle electric control module. Electric control module. And that is basically what you need to do. Here is the challenge. The Audi R8, there is no easy way to snake a wire through the firewall. It's basically you either have to cut into a cover that surrounds the existing wiring loom and try to snake a wire in through there. Or put another way, there is an option for you to figure out how to piggyback off existing connectors that are already present in the car. So you don't need to actually manually snake new wires from the engine through to the interior. And that is what we're going to do. What I found out that is the ideal way.